my name is Nnenna Onyewuchi, and I am a founding partner at Yellow Brick Road, which is an advertising agency here in Lagos. I'm also a founding partner at a small strategic consultancy called Blackbox, both based in Lagos, both a couple of years old, so we're beginning to make a name for ourselves. Well, my role is I'm the director of strategy at Yellow Brick Road, and I'm also a strategist on the Blackbox side. So the way that I explain what strategy is to people is that it's the thinking behind the marketing. If you think about marketing as how we get people to buy things, strategy is basically finding out what it is that people want to buy, really, and figuring out the best way to sell it to them. And then the creatives go off and find interesting ways to do it. But strategy is really about finding the insight. It's really the key that unlocks the sale. One of the perils of becoming a senior person is you end up sitting at your desk a lot. When I was younger, I spent a lot of my time doing research and out in the field. Now, I probably spend a good portion of my day at my desk. Lots of meetings, so reviews, client meetings. But what I do and what I love is actually when I get to sit at my computer and actually craft strategy. That's always my favorite part of the day. But there's less and less of that now. The sheerest happenstance. I didn't study marketing or advertising or anything. I don't actually think that when I was in university I had a concept of advertising as a career. My plan was to go to law school. I studied English and African studies, and I was going to go to law school, and that was my plan. And then the summer before I was supposed to go, it became clear to me that I was never going to practice. And so I was kind of at a loss. I've been living in Los Angeles, and I moved to New York, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I was thinking about publishing, and really was like 22 and had no idea what I was doing, and realized that I needed money if I was going to get an apartment to pay rent and not starve. So I started temping, actually, and I was temping, and the very first temp job I had was working in the marketing department of the jewelry division of Avon. And it was really eye-opening. It was an entire kind of life and world that I had no idea existed. And Avon is a really interesting company because I don't know if you know they sell stuff by catalog, but this was they're really known for beauty, but this was in the jewelry division. And I worked with some really, really smart, amazingly astute marketers, because what Avon has to do, they consider kind of the mass American market, and what they have to be able to do is to figure out which of the big global trends will translate to the high streets and figure out when they're going to hit so that they have products in the market at the right time. And I was supposed to be there for a week, and I ended up staying there for like 8 months or something. And that was really when the idea of marketing as an industry really kind of became clear to me. But I was still sort of interested in publishing. But my headhunter said that she had this job at McCann Erickson in New York, and she thought I would be great for it. And I had probably the worst first interview ever, because I knew nothing about advertising. I knew nothing about McCann. I just kind of showed up with my big afro. But for some reason, the HR lady took a liking to me. And so I went through the series of interviews, and I ended up interviewing with a lady that I was going to work for. Her name is Margie Altschiller. And she was just the most amazing one. And I fell in love with her in that interview. And so I always say that I didn't go to work in advertising, I went to go work for Margie, because she was someone that I wanted to work with and learn from. And so I don't even think that I really understood what the job was. I just knew that I wanted to work with this lady. And it was working in business development for McCann. So I was the business development coordinator, which is like the lowest of the admin kind of job. But what my job was to do was to coordinate pitches for the agency. And because New York is the lead agency globally, I would coordinate global pitches and also national pitches. And it's a great place actually to learn advertising, because you get to see a campaign come together in like 2-3 weeks, and you get to see how all the pieces fit. It also is incredibly exhausting, and it's really hard work. I mean, I was working upwards of 90 hours a week regularly. I remember the first time that I didn't go home, and I was like at 8:30 in the morning, standing outside Express, waiting for them to open so I could buy clothes so I could go to work. At that point, I should probably have decided to do something else with my life. But yeah, so I worked at McCann, and I worked in business development for a couple of years, and then it was just, you run a race every day, you do all this work, but you never get to kind of follow the clients on. And I was sort of, I think that I felt like I'd learned as much as I could from there, and I was thinking of leaving actually, and so they said to me, rather than go on to do this somewhere else, is there anything else you're interested in? And strategy was the one thing within the industry that spoke to me, because strategy is really, as I say, it's about mind control. It's about how do you convince someone to do something that they weren't going to do before. And I was lucky enough that the heads of planning gave me a home. And yes, I worked in planning at McCann for many years, and I think one of my favorite things that I did was I was part of a small practice group, starting a small practice group called Tag Ideation. McCann was a very kind of traditional, old schoolish agency, and there was a group of us that were looking for an opportunity to work on kind of young lifestyle hit brands. And so we decided we're going to start a kind of a company within a company. And because we were so small, we had license to do some really interesting things and build proprietary tools. And the interesting thing for me is that now a lot of the research methods, ethnographic research methods that are so common, right then they were pioneering them, right? And it was a cool, exciting time when we were doing product development and just kind of fun and interesting things. And then in 2004, I came home. And it was either the smartest or the dumbest thing I've ever done. And I'm still not sure which. And I came home because I lived abroad most of my life. And I had kind of gotten to a place where I sort of achieved some success and was looking at what was down the road. And what was clear to me was the opportunities here were so much larger just because the industry was so much more nascent. So I came home in 2004 and I worked several places, and it took me a little while to find a home and to settle. And then in 2007 I went to go work for ZK Advertising. And really it was a great fit. And I think it took me a couple of years to find it. And then so about a year and a half, 2 years ago, my partners and I took over ZK and we ran it at Yellow Brick Road. I think that anybody who's running a business in Nigeria will tell you that everybody faces the same challenges. I always joke that diesel is like is the cost of diesel is the cost of 2 employees. And if I didn't have to run and service my gen, I probably would have hired 2 more people. So I think we're all aware of what the infrastructural challenges are. Is the internet working when you're trying to send that incredibly large and very important file to the client? So they're kind of basic challenges like that. I think that from an industry perspective, I think that the biggest challenges that we face are really human resource challenges. It's hard to find. There are certain craft skills that are missing, and this is partly a result of failures in our educational system. It's partly a result of an industry that sort of, I think, lost its way a little bit when there was a great brain drain. And the thing about Nigeria in the 70s, we had a great creative industry and an amazing advertising industry. We were doing, back then, like £500,000 ads. But a lot of that got lost in the 80s and 90s. And so you have an industry where a lot of the senior people were just sort of the people that were left behind. And I think we're kind of in a rebuilding stage. So we find it's hard to find talent. And all the talented people already have jobs. So it's really about finding great young people with potential and training them. Before my partners and I made this decision, I'd always said that I was a person with no ambition. I had no ambition to be famous. I just want to kind of do my work and enjoy my work and go home. And then I really was very reluctant to kind of take this on, because I never really thought of myself as someone who would own a business. But my sister convinced me that at some point we all have to grow up. And the last 2 years, I've learned that I am incredibly ambitious, and it's not an ambition to be rich or to be famous. It's an ambition to leave a legacy. And I would say that the dream, the image that I have in my head is to be like 95 years old, like in a wheelchair, crippled and blind, and they wheel me out on stage like a founding member, the founding partner of Yellow Brick Road, and I look out and there's hundreds of people that have come through the system. And for me, that's what drives me, is to be able to leave something. And so that 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when I'm long forgotten, there'll be like my picture on the wall, and it'll be like that name, and they were the people that started it. And that's, I guess, I want to build an institution. Professionally, I think probably I don't like to think of them as mistakes. I think that what I always tell people is that the journey that you take is the journey you're supposed to take. I think that when I first arrived in Nigeria, and I hadn't been to Nigeria in like 10 years, so I really had no real understanding of how it really worked. And I had a kind of great job, and I was enjoying it, but I was feeling a little bit, like I wasn't growing. And there was this other job, and it looked like a great opportunity, so I jumped without really doing my background work. And where I arrived wasn't really the situation that I thought it would be. And so which is something that they were told is really bad for your resume. And I think that if looking back at it now, the 2020 vision, what I've learned is that in Nigeria especially, you should look a gift horse in the mouth. You have to do your research, you have to do your background. You have to understand what the fundamental business plan, because there's a lot of people who talk a good game, but don't really have their stuff together. But what it allowed me to do is that I got to learn about content development, get an understanding of how distribution works in this country, learn about all these different industries in 2 years, and that's now the background that I use in the work that I do now. Okay. So even though there's a section of my resume that if you look at it too closely, probably doesn't read that well, the experience was actually incredibly valuable in what I'm doing now, just especially from a senior position, to be able to speak to clients about distribution. So it's not the core of what I do, but I have an understanding of how it works, to be able to speak to clients about content development, product development. Okay. I think the biggest thing that I've sacrificed, I think is probably, advertising it's a labor-intensive business. You spend a lot of time in the office, and I think that what you sacrifice personal time, you sacrifice sleep, and just, I think that the time for myself is probably, especially now, because it's not just me, I have a responsibility for all people that work for me, so the biggest thing is time. I think that's the biggest sacrifice that you make. Practicing advertising in this environment is challenging, but it's changing. I think that the industry is in a really interesting place, where you have, there's an old guard, and sort of there's an established kind of battalion of agencies that have kind of kept the industry going, who have great relationships, have done some great work, have some great heritage. And I really respect what a lot of them have done in terms of building an industry, kind of rebuilding an industry from scratch. But I think what you're seeing now, and I think Yellow Brick Road is kind of one of the new generation of agencies, sort of younger management, some different ideas, coming in with a kind of a different focus in terms of new technology and new approaches. So it'll be interesting to see which of this kind of crop of new agencies goes on to become, So 15 years from now is when we talk about Yellow Brick Road. They're the old establishment boring people. And so we'll see who makes it. But I think that what it's going to do, it is going to change the way that the industry functions. I'm just having a different perspective. I don't think that it's either or. And I don't think that it's an issue of that one is more effective than the other. I think that they work differently. And I think that depending on who it is that you're trying to reach and what you're trying to get them to do, they work differently. So if I have a big splashy TV ad, it's going to, and I run it, kind of nationwide, I'm going to get instant, because you have to remember that we've got like less than 40% of the population online. So if I'm trying to reach a big mass audience, social media isn't going to help me, right? So if you're trying to build that kind of big, emotional, kind of big scale brand feeling, social media is not going to get that for you. Your big brand TV ad is always going to win, which is why even in America, even in Japan, they're still doing it. Right? So the traditional advertising has a role. I think social media is it's more useful when you're trying to build a relationship, you're building community, you're trying to engage. So we have to think about it. What it does is, even though it's a one-to-many medium, it functions like a one-to-one. And it allows you to have conversations with your consumer, and allows them to have conversations with each other. So I think that the way to think about it is not one or the other, but how do you build complementary campaigns and make them work together? Because you have to think about it, how people actually use media. It's not like people have stopped watching television because they're using social media. They just added social media to their media mix. And what you need to do is understand how people are using, and then find a way to use those channels to achieve your objectives. Social media, I think, for me, the interesting thing is, even though we're an advertising agency, we actually don't do a lot of marketing. We sort of come from the place where we want the work to speak for itself. What social media I find does for us though is that, because we have a team of very young people and they're all very active in the social space. And what we find is they help us seed campaigns because they get very excited about the work that they do and they're very proud of the work that they do. So they share a lot of the work. So actually, they are our own kind of silent PR force because they put the work out there and they share it on their networks. And so we've gotten clients based on the fact that someone's seen something that someone has shared. So for us, it's really, it's from that perspective, it's worked out as kind of a quiet, underground kind of way to do PR without actually going out there and screaming. From a client perspective, different clients have different needs. So we're using it to help clients build community. We're using it to help clients do customer relation management. We're using it to help clients build awareness in specific communities. So I think that it really, at the end of the day, from a strategist point of view, everything is objective based. So LinkedIn will do a different job than Facebook will do a different job than Twitter. So it depends what it is that you're trying to achieve and then finding the right platform to kind of get you to where you want. With the Yellow Brick Road and Blackbox, we are doing a lot of actually interesting things. We're kind of in an interesting place. We have a bunch of campaigns that are about to break. Unfortunately, I can't talk about them. I think that from a business perspective, we always say that we don't want to be the biggest agency in Nigeria, but we want to be the agency with the happiest clients, right? So we want to do award-winning work that works in the marketplace. And personally, I want to get to a place where I never have to pitch again. I want to get all my work on referral. And like I said, I want to build a legacy. Eventually, yes, I think we have regional ambitions. West Africa first, and then, who knows. But right now, we're kind of taking it one day at a time on the client.